live on stage.
The sound.
Orlando.
So, is they ready?
Yes.
The sound.
Orlando.
What is going on, party people? What is going on? This is the Sound of Orlando show. And I would like to welcome all the new listeners, everybody tuning in for the first time, man. Welcome to Orlando. Welcome to the Soul Show. This is your boy, Rome. And today I had to rock the hat, man, because I'm literally going through my childhood tonight. Tonight is a very special night. You know, when these nights come along, man, you got to kind of enjoy them. You got to embrace them because nights like these don't come by a lot. You know, when we're talking about this next guest that I got coming on tonight, man, it's just, I mean, where do you start? The first time I heard a 2 Live Crew record, I was at a skating rink, and I remember Throw That D coming on, and I was just completely blown away. Nothing had sounded like that, like nothing I've ever heard sounded like that. And then the next record that I heard was I wouldn't lie to you. I want you to get ready to get on because I got some old nasty ass that's on tonight. Let's go. Please, somebody. Like when I heard this level of production, this sound, I was just completely blown away. And, you know, it was one of these kind of records where you're young and you couldn't play it that loud. It was like a Richard Pryor record, and you had to play it low so your parents didn't hear you. But when you went out with your peoples, I mean, that's all you was bumping, man. I'm talking about 2 Live is what we are. Get it, girl. Throw that D. I mean, hey, we want some, you know, man, ghetto style DJs. Man, the hits just go on forever. I mean, you know, Do Why Diddy, you know, Me So Horny, you know, Move Something. I mean, it just goes on and on. And this brother, to me, is one of the most underrated producers, you know, and it's such a crazy story, you know, how he came to Miami and completely became the king of the 808 in Miami, man. I mean, you want nothing unless you had that sound, that Luke Skywalker record sound, you know. So, man, when we're talking about our legends, bro, and the cuts that he did, man, at the tempos that he was doing it, man, you know, it's just everything is completely amazing when you're talking about the legacy of what 2 Live Crew did. You know, R.I.P. to Fresh Kid Ice. Shout out to Brother Marquis. Shout out to Luke Skywalker, you know, Uncle Luke. But man, I'm so honored tonight to bring on one of the foundating brothers of one of the founders of 2 Live Crew. The man that took that 808 and went just completely bananas. The man, the myth, the legend, the super duper DJ, the Tretch DJ. Yes, I'm talking about none other than my brother from another mother, Mr. Mixx. Let's go.
What's up, brother? What's going on?
You got it, brother, man. I'm loving that background, man. I'm loving that background, brother. That takes me way, way, way back, man. Heck yeah. Let's go. Yes. Welcome to the Soul Show, my brother. Welcome to the Soul Show.
Happy to be here, brother. Happy to be here.
Man, so we got, I mean, you know, you're the type of brother where I could probably talk to you for literally hours, but we don't have that kind of time. So I got to get right into it. Now everybody knows the legacy of what Two Live Crew meant, not only for, you know, our sound in Florida and birthing what would eventually become the Southern style of hip hop. But you guys went to the Supreme Court. You know, one of the first people to have that parental advisory sticker on. You took that 808 and ran with it. And we're going to talk about all of that. But let's first start at the very beginning and talk about how you grew up or came up in California, and talk about that background there and how it got started, where you started Two Live Crew over there and then brought it over to Miami. So talk about that background for the people there.
Yeah, man. Basically, you know, a lot of people don't really know that what it is that I started doing with you know, once we came to Miami. It didn't start in Miami. It started in California, and then before California, it started in England and London when I was stationed in the military over there. So you know, it's so many different layers to it. It's kind of like I got people in the background that's kind of messing with me. If you can give us a second where I can turn these people off so I can concentrate on what it is I need to do. You know, this is definitely, you know, some Two Live stuff. Just give me 1 second. Hold on.
You got it, my brother. You got it, man. You got it, brother. Man. Shout out to my man Ricky Rick. What's good, man? This is our childhood right here, man. We talking the Tretch DJ, Mr. Mixx. Word. Yes. I mean, it's just amazing, man. We're gonna go at it, man.
All right. Yeah, man.
Good? You back? All right.
Yeah,
Cool.
kill that noise upstairs, man.
All right, cool, brother.
Yeah, man. So like I was saying, my journey started in England, and at that time, like I said, I was in the military. It was my first base of assignment after coming out of the basic training and doing my skill set for what I was going to be doing in the service. I got stationed in England. And back in those days, that's when Planet Rock and Ag Jam and all these other futuristic sounding type records was coming out. So first of all, I mean, I played saxophone all through elementary, all through high school and all of that. So I already got music notation in me, but I couldn't figure out how they were making the records the way they were making them, because back in those days, you didn't have videos like you could just go to YouTube, whatever it is that you thinking about, you could just go to YouTube or go to Google and ask questions. We didn't have anything like that. All you could do was just listen to and try to guesstimate what the hell was going on. So there was this breakdance group called the Rocksteady Crew out of New York City, and they came over for an exhibition. So I went to the exhibition. So it was them breakdancing, and they had Africa Islam, which was a big underground DJ in New York at that time, DJing for them while they doing all their breaking and all of that. So when I seen Africa Islam scratching up there, I equated what it was that I was seeing to a person playing an instrument. So scratching and all that stuff came pretty easy to me, because once I actually got to see it versus just hearing it on records and not really knowing how it's really being done. Because like I say, back in those days, there was no magazines where you could see pictures of it or any of that. And some of the records that actually came out, they were 12-inch singles. They weren't full album covers. So they didn't have layouts of like how I got my DJ system laid out in front of you guys right here. You know, if you didn't see the pictures, you had to imaginate what it was that was going on or what wasn't going on. If you wasn't from the New York tri-state area, you didn't know anything. You were just boxed out. So basically what happened is, you know, I developed a pop locking group over there in England with some dependent kids that was from the United States. Their parents was in the military there, but they was in high school there. So me and these 3 other young guys, we got into a big contest that was in London, and we took second place, and we got some studio equipment out of doing the pop locking and breaking and all that. So this drum machine that I got, it was a rolling drum machine. It wasn't the 808, but it was the 606. And I read through the manual, learned how to program it, this, that, and the other. And it turns out the 808 drum machine programs the same way. So I was kind of up on a lot of things like in 1982, 1983. And then when I'm hearing the sounds that's coming off of this drum machine, I'm equating them to the sounds that I hear on the records. So I knew that I would be able to emulate or imitate what it was that I was hearing because I knew how to program the machine. So one thing just led to another. I don't want to, I want you to jump in and ask me particular questions, but that was the way that it kind of started up. Me being in England, them having, big Jamaican influence over there, bass cabinets, all of that stuff. I was already kind of accustomed to that because I was in that atmosphere where they were playing reggae and lovers rock and all of that kind of stuff over there in England. And during that time, that was when Culture Club and Wham and all of those other groups that was making party up-tempo dance music. That's why it's kind of like was in me with the whole Two Live Crew stuff. So a lot of the stuff started from there, and then I got stationed in California after my tour was over out there in England.
Well, that's just insane and awesome kind of news for a lot of people because when they're kind of GPSing how did Two Live form, it normally, the story is told it started in Miami by the ghetto DJs.
Right.
But
that movement of it. Yeah.
Right. But technically, the way you're describing it, it started in England and came over here to to California.
Right, for sure. It was. I wasn't calling it Two Live Crew at that time, but I was just honing my skills. And it's really funny that when I seen Africa Islam doing what he was doing with the breakdance group, Rocksteady Crew, my next military paycheck, I went and got me some turntables, not the traditional Techniques 1200s. There were some regular turntables that was able to operate like what it was that he was doing in a little makeshift mixer. And I had all of this stuff in my barracks room. So I'm in there cutting and scratching in the barracks. People are kind of tripping. I mean, some of the guys that's from New York, they have an understanding of what's happening, but nobody else does.
Right.
It was, so I was, like I say, just honing my skills. I wasn't really thinking that I was going to go into the rap music business. It was a hobby. And I figured that, if I could hear what it was that they was doing on the records, I can actually try to execute the scratches and all of that stuff during my time being in the service.
And where in California, for the people that don't know?
Okay, I got stationed March Air Force Base, which is in Riverside, California. That's like 60 miles east of Los Angeles, straight down the interstate. And that's where I met Fresh Kid Ice, Chris Wong. He was, like I say, he was in the military. He was stationed in Illinois before he came to March Air Force Base. Both me and him worked in the hospital. I worked in the dining room, and he worked in outpatient records. So he met me by hearing about me having turntables in my barracks room. He was from New York, so he was, he had an understanding of what was going on. So he hollered at me one time coming through the lunch line. I'm up there flipping burgers, and he asked me about, what it is that, I had turntables and this and that. And he said that he write rhymes and this, that, and the other. Maybe I can come by your room and come check out your layout and whatever. And that's how it initially got started. And there was another guy that was from New York too, he worked a civil engineering job, but we were all in the same barracks building. So we all heard about, I heard about them based off of what it is that I had. And they start coming around the room, and we just start, since we was into the culture of it in the early phase of underground hip hop, my room became the hangout room.
Wow. Wow. I mean, do continue, my brother. How did it begin that you guys said, all right, we're gonna make a group and we're gonna get serious about this and do our own thing. Talk about that.
Yeah, well, basically, what happened is that um, at the military base, there was a guy that would always DJ. His name was Jumpin' Sonny, but he just was a DJ at the NCO club, which is called Non-Commissioned Officers Club. That was, the enlisted people were able to go to that nightclub, and he would never give us opportunity to get in there and get on the mic or for me to get on the track. That was unheard of. So what we wanted to do was, okay, we're listening to all these underground hip hop records, and we kind of got an idea of how they're constructed and this and that. Let's make our own recording. Let's go to a real studio. And at that time, by that time, I had ended up getting an 808 drum machine. I actually found one. We used to go back and forth to Los Angeles to get my records. There was a guy named Tracy Kendrick and Courtney Branch and Foot that had a record pool called I can't think of what the name of the Impact Record Pool in Los Angeles. So we had signed up with them, and I would always get my records from them every month. I would ride out to LA, get a gang of records from the record pool, and that's how we was able to keep up with stuff. And we were seeing different little guys that was in LA, Egyptian Lover, LA Dream Team, Ice-T, a couple other people that were recording for this one record company called Macola Records. Even on Russ Parr, Bobby Jimmy, he was dealing with the same company. And the company had all their information on the label, even their phone number. So we actually called up there after we did our studio recording to see if we could get the record into that system. And they let us come down there and bring the record down there. And they didn't even, because at that time, they couldn't even really listen to it. We weren't A&R to anything. They just knew that we had a master and it was some rap music on it. And they just took it from us. They took it from us, not literally like snatched it from us, but they put it in their system because they knew that the more product that they had, the more situations that they could sell. So we were very fortunate that we were just mindful of how to put ourselves in the mix of something. Nobody in LA put us on. Nobody even knew that we even existed. Egyptian Loving them knew that we existed because they used to come out to Riverside to the skating rink and do parties. And other guy that longtime friend of mine, Rodney O from Rodney O and Joe Cooley.
Yes.
They
Rodney O. Yes.
They went to school out there in Riverside. They were still in high school. Him and Marquise were schoolmates, and they actually had did a recording with this one guy named Cliff Ritchie. They had a little record company. So Marquise is actually a guy that made a record before I did. You know what I mean? And I would hear about him battling guys, at the little parties that was going on in Riverside. I was, part of the little stuff outside of what was going on the military base. We would hang out in some of the different little clubs and get-togethers, and that's how I learned about those guys. And Egyptian Movement was a part of this DJ group called Uncle Jam's Army out of Los Angeles, and they was the business in LA. And like I said, they would come out to Riverside sometimes and do events. That's how I got connected with Egyptian Lover through Rodney O, but we never did any business. We just knew who they were.
Right. And so that moment that you guys kind of meet up and you're talking about Brother Marquise, you're talking about Fresh Kid Ice. How did you guys, first thing I want to know, and I'm pretty sure all my listeners want to know, how did you guys come up with Two Live Crew?
Well, it's really supposed to be two as in TOO, like you the next level.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But TOO didn't look good spelled out, so we used the number two instead.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and matter of fact, the guy that was in civil engineering, his name was Amazing V. He came up with the name, and he said, why we Two Live? Because we're Two Live, like nobody can get with us, and this and that, or whatever. Okay.
Right.
All right, so that's what we'll call ourselves. Okay, cool. blah blah blah. So we did we ended up, like I said, we went to the recording studio and we did a two-sided 12-inch. You know, one side, Amazing V did his song called The Revelation that he wrote up. You know, his stuff was more so like, back in those days, if people don't understand, like when Grandmaster Flash and Furious 5 came out with The Message, most of the stuff was considered, it was party music, but it was still like, you know, conscious rap. It would be considered conscious rap now. So
Right.
everybody was, you know, wanted to be, you know, up on themselves and, you know, be careful of how you move around in the streets. So that's how those records was kind of, you know, done back in those days. So Amazing V did his song about the revelation. So on the flip side, Fresh Kid Ice and me did, you know, I did all my scratching and stuff on the flip side, and he did more of a hip hop style, slowed down, underground hip hop situation on the other side that kind of was like similar to like if, you know, for the audience that don't really know this guy, there was a big producer, DJ dude named Mantronics out of New York.
Mantronics. I was going to ask you about Mantronics because Fresh is the Word
Right.
was so hard during them days.
And that's who Kid Ice style is kind of based off of, the rapper that was
NCT. Yeah.
Right, NCT, right. His stuff is kind of based off of his stuff.
Right. Wow. Wow. You heard that? Orlando, you heard that? Mantronics. Shout out to Mantronics and MCT, man. That needle to the groove, that bass line, that Fresh is the Word, man. That was like everything during that time period.
Right.
So, continue, my brother.
Yeah, so, you know, so we went in the studio and did that. We got the record together, and like I said, we called the record company in Los Angeles that took the master down there, and they, you know, they put it into their system. So at that time, you know, we don't have no real record company. We just, you know, did a DBA doing business ads and put it in the newspaper. If nobody is, you know, saying that they don't have a company called Fresh Beat Records, then we couldn't use that name. So that was the name of the label, Fresh Beat Records. The records got put through Macola Records' big distribution system. And at that time, just like I said, we're still in the military. So all of the invoices and stuff is going to my mom's house, which is, she lived, like maybe 20 miles from the base, a city called Corona. So all of the invoices are coming there. So when I go over there and go visit, I'm going to get the invoices, and I see that there's some records that got sent to St. Louis, to New York, to Miami, to Texas, and they would say, okay, 300 records was ordered, and this is how much money's supposed to come from it. I don't really know what I'm looking. I'm just looking to see what the money's supposed to be. But we never was receiving any money, so the invoices really didn't mean anything to us. We just wasn't thinking about it in that way. We were just glad to be able to go up to the pressing plant and get 2 boxes of records and bring them back to the base and give them out so people could see that we made a record.
Right. You hear that, people, man? I mean, that's love right there, man. And who knew? Because down here in Orlando, I remember seeing that Fresh Beat Records 2 Live crew at the spot called Southern Records. Used to be downtown on Orange Avenue. And I remember seeing that record. And I was like, damn, they from LA? Because at that time, LA was just starting to bubble a little bit. I mean, like you said, they had Egyptian Lover, they had LA Dream Team. Shout out to LA Dream Team. They're going to be on here next week. And it was just, when you went to the record store during that time, everything hip hop you just wanted. Like if it seemed like like nobody had that record, you wanted that record too. So that was one of those records, that you just wanted. And I remember seeing that. And me and my buddy Rick, shout out to Rick, we would always talk about 2 Live Crew from LA, 2 Live Crew from LA. I don't know, man, but so continue, my brother. Continue.
Yeah. So what ended up happening is we had got the records like in March of '85. Then in July, Luther Campbell, which everybody knows is Uncle Luke Skywalker. He was a concert promoter and DJ and had group called the Ghetto Style DJs. As his situation, they were doing parties and all that. And they were bringing guys like Mantronics, Divine Sounds, Tila Rock, Run DMC, Houdini. They was bringing them guys down from New York to come do shows at the parties that they were giving. And
right.
They even had Egyptian Level come out, and a couple of people from California come out. So he reaches out to, he calls my mom's house because that's the only reference phone number for the record company was my mom's house. So he calls my mom's house and says, yeah, I'm Luke Skywalker. My name is Luke, blah, blah, blah. I want to see if I can get Two Live Crew to come out and do a show. So when my mom got in contact with me about it, I said, a show? Really? Somebody who actually wants to do a show? Somebody really wants to do a show? So I reach out, I get the number. It's a 305 number, so I know it's a Miami number. And I was seeing, a bunch of the records, there was a place called, I couldn't even pronounce it back then, but it was Hialeah and a couple of other little places in Miami that the records was, a lot of records was being sold out there. So when I try to call them, it turns out that it's a beeper number. And at that time, shit, I didn't even have a beeper then. Only doctors and people had beepers. We're so lame and, kind of behind on what it was that was actually going on the East Coast. So when I reached back out to him, he called back and he said, yeah, man, I want to bring you guys out to do a show. How many people are in your group? So I said, well, for us to come down there and do a show, it's me and two other guys that we got break dancers and this and that. Said, oh, no. I don't want all those people. I just want the people that's on the record. That's it. So I said, yeah, well, then that's me and the other two rappers. So he sent some money out for us to be able to get on a flight. Back in those days, if you guys want to really Google something, there was an airline called People Express. It kind of worked like the bus system. You could pay for your ticket in mid-flight. Once you're in the sky, you pay you pay for your flight the same way like how you get on the train. Sometimes they'll get your tickets and all that stuff once you're on the train or once you're on the bus or whatever. So, but if you didn't have all your money when the plane landed, your ass was going to jail because it's almost like you stole away. It was just that sweet back in those days. So he sent us some money out to be able to get on the flight and all of that. And then we got out there. He put us in a hotel. We was there for like 2 or 3 days. As a matter of fact, at that time, right when we came down there in August, I was just getting out of the service. I was being discharged from the service. My time was up. But Kid Ice and the other guy, Mason V, they still had time to do. So I don't know if they got in trouble when they had to go back or any of that kind of stuff, but I was already out of the military. So we went down there and did show for a weekend. And we did a Saturday night and a Friday night. And we were just tripping off of the fact that we're actually all the way across country actually about to perform some music that we were just dicking around in the barracks, just messing around. So that in itself was a trip. And then once, like I said, when we seen Luke's setup with the he had, like maybe 6, at that time he had like 16 cabinets, bass cabinets with the tweeters on the top of them. So he had a good sound system. You know what I mean? But their DJing was throwing me off because I'm accustomed to paying attention to hearing scratching and this and that, and they weren't doing anything of the sort. They were doing old school DJing, talking over the records and letting the record play they weren't even queuing the records up like how a DJ or a scratcher would do. They would, they would put the needle on the record and get it to a particular part, and then start the record up with the start button. That really kind of, tripped me out that they was doing that. So it seemed like I was kind of going back in the time a little bit when we got down there to Florida. But they were so much up on other things like style and, gold chains and guys with gold teeth in their mouth and all of this other stuff that was totally foreign to me. Maybe Chris, Kid Ice had a little feel of that by them guys being from New York, but it was totally, brand new to me. So it was kind of like a culture shock. And some of the records that they were playing was some of the stuff I had never heard before because it's East Coast stuff. And like I say, when I came back from England, I came right back to California. I was born and raised in California. So all of the East Coast stuff is like foreign to me outside of guys that I was in the service with. They would, they would tell me about North Carolina and Florida and this and that, but it ain't nothing like until you get out there and see what it is for yourself. You know what I mean? So
you hear that, people? He just dropped the quote, one of the first quotes of the night. You don't know nothing about Florida until you come to Florida.
It is a different planet, for sure.
Yes, we can show you better than we can tell you, brother. Continue, my brother. I'm loving the story. Continue.
Yeah, so, Luke didn't ask us what we wanted to get paid, and we didn't know to ask. So we get on the plane. Like I say, he got us the flights to come out there and put us up in a hotel for 2 or 3 days. And when it came time for us to get paid, right in the neighborhood, right out not too far from where his mom lived at, he paid us right there out in the middle of the street, like $200-300 a piece. And at that time, that's about what we was getting on one paycheck for 2 weeks worth of military work. So that, it was just, it was a crazy experience, and he knew that he didn't discuss any kind of money with us. We wasn't even thinking about it. We wasn't tripping, none of that, So once he did that, I just felt like, it was a great situation. And me personally, when the other guys went back, I asked them, could I stay for a week, with him, just hang out with him and this, that, and other. And he let me do it. So, I'm just thinking, okay, well, this is the first guy that I meet in the music business. Everything is just going good. The young dudes that was around that was still in high school, they weren't starstruck on us or anything like that, but they knew, but we were extremely down to earth. So they was taking me around and doing little things and this, that, and the other. So I felt like, this atmosphere was going to be a good atmosphere for me, in the future. And then we came back much later.
Give people perspective real quick. We're in Miami for all the people that may be tuning in from Miami.
Heart of Liberty City.
Liberty City. Let's go. Let's go.
Heart of Liberty City. We don't really know what kind of, just like I say, I'd never been to Miami before. And, you hear about Miami Vice and different things. So I'm thinking it's like no different than maybe like California. I didn't really think it was hood or any of that until I got there. But even with that being the case, it wasn't like the hood kind of stuff that I had an understanding of. Bloods and Crips was super prevalent in the early 80s. Matter of fact, this hat that I got on was like, the gangbangers wore these types of hats. They're called velvet golf hats. And, if you ever, look at Bloods and Crips from the 80s, they had these kind of hats. And I've always wore these type of hats. They would, they sold them in California. So I already had an understanding of, I never really thought about hood stuff. I just knew that we had, gangbangers, troublemakers. I didn't really think of most of the places in California ain't really ran down like it is maybe on the East Coast. It's a little better, more in shape, and people are really more well-to-do in California more so than other places. But they got, they definitely got some hood spots in South Central and Watts and all of that. But I wasn't really privy to that because I didn't have no friends there, so I wouldn't really know it. So once I got to Liberty City, it was just a whole, like I say, a whole nother culture shock, along with, black folks not really being black folks. They Haitian, Bahamian, this, that, and the third. So I'm not, all of this, I was kind of accustomed to dealing with those type of people when I was in England, because London is one of those kind of places where there's people that's coming from all over the place, Africa and throughout the Caribbean. So I kind of understood it, but I didn't really think Miami would be that Caribbean, Caribbean based. You know what I'm saying? So it was totally different. Totally different.
So talk about you getting the man of our town, which is Luke. Shout out to Luke Skywalker. He's always, to me, felt like he had that spirit about him. He was the mayor even back then. I mean, he just had that personality, that confidence about him. And so talk about how the idea of you guys joining forces comes along.
Well, what happened is when we came out there the second time, we came out there to do some New Year's shows that Luke took us around and got us some bookings. So after those shows was over with and Chris went back, I was down there for another week or so. And we were riding around. At that time, he was riding around in a Honda Civic. I respected him. I felt like, he was a young dude. At that time, I was 22. I think he was my 25, 26. And we was riding around, and I asked him, I said, man, I don't really know nothing about none of this stuff. It seemed like you're a good dude or whatever. Would you be all right with managing us?
Right.
He said, yeah, I'll do it. Ain't no problem. Because he knew that based on how we came down there, we didn't have any understanding about the music business, and he didn't either. He was just a concert promoter and was doing parties. He wasn't in the music business either. He was just on the side of getting the groups and knowing how to call up to the booking agency and get the groups booked to do shows. He wasn't messing around with no records or anything like that at that time. So what ended up happening is they were doing a dance, they called it the Throw the D dance, every time this one record called Dance to the Drummer's Beat would come on in their parties. And they were always guys that was making up dances in the parties. So what ended up happening is we said, we want to make an appreciation record for y'all bringing us out and, helping us out and this, that, and the others. So we decided to make a record based off of the dance. And I took the Dance to the Drummer's Beat record and mixed it into a new beat that I did. And that was the birth of Miami Bass. That was the birth of us being able to mix and mingle in what was going on in Miami at the time. And when Luke got the record, matter of fact, when we was actually down there in Miami, he actually took me to a guy that I really wanted to do some work with, which was at that time was Pretty Tony. He had a bunch of big records out. When I Hear Music and a bunch of other records.
Shout out to Pretty Tony.
He took us over there to their studio and this, that, and the other. We was kind of blown away because big studio set up and this and that. And he was playing me, freestyle on them music and Trenier's new music and all of that stuff. So, we was just out there really just in a world that we never thought that we would be in, but we were embraced. You know what I'm saying? So when we did the Throw the D record, Luke took the record around to a bunch of different record companies in Miami, and nobody wanted to mess with the record. Nobody wanted the record. So what he did is he took the little money that he had from doing parties and things like that and got the records pressed up and started promoting the stuff at their parties and got enough records to the local record pool dude there and got the record spread around the city. And that was, like I say, at that time, that was, it was, the record company was, called Luke Skywalker Records, but it wasn't no Luke Skywalker Records. It was just something that got put on a label that, you know, they got done up, and that was that. It wasn't like he had a record company, but you know, it was the way that particular record got pressed up. So it was, you know, if you look on any of the records, it would say Two Live Crew and Ghetto Style DJs. So,
Right.
So just like I say, the record did really well, and which in turn made me feel like, well, shit, we need to relocate to Miami and try to maximize on the fact that we got some momentum, because there was, even though we was getting records sold in different little markets and stuff, we never heard from anybody but him.
Right. So
I took that as a thing of saying, well, shit, let's go out here and see what it is that we can do. So when
now let's stop right there. Let's pause right there because I mean, you've done so much great shit, but for a lot of people, that Throw That D was the introduction of that sound. To your point, that was the birth of bass music in
Right.
the way that no one ever heard it before. For all my producers, all my DJs out there, talk about what went into, how did you know this was the sound? How did you get to that place to know how to drop that 808 that way? I mean, the record was mixed so incredibly, and then the cuts, you was cutting up like Dolomite and all this other stuff. Talk about what, because that was the formula. Like,
Right,
it seemed
exactly.
like you guys created this Kentucky Fried Chicken formula.
Right.
It didn't matter what time you ate it; it was good. It was just
Right.
good.
Exactly.
Talk about that.
Well, basically what happened is, when I was, you know, when I came back from England, coming back from England back into the States, one of the dudes that I was in the military with over there in England had a younger brother that was a DJ in New York. So what happened is, when I was coming back from England, they give you X amount of money for your vacation time that you didn't use or whatever. So I had a good piece of money when I was coming back, and I came, you know, when you come from England, you have to fly into New York. So,
Right.
and then they dispatch you out from New York to wherever it is that you got to go to. So I flew into New York, met this dude's brother. He took me downtown, 42nd Street, this and that, to one of the electronics shops, and got me my first pair of Technique 1200s. And I really was kind of spooked, because you would hear about all of the crazy stories in New York, people getting jacked for their Adidas and they, you know, and they sheepskin coats and this, that, and the other. And we had to take these turntables from 42nd Street on the train all the way to the Bronx, where this guy stayed. So you could, I mean, and these are fresh in the pack, you know, so we got 2 boxes that show that they're these turntables. You know, and the Bronx goes through Harlem, all of the Harlem stops and all of that. So,
Right.
so, and then we had to walk maybe about 4 blocks from where the station was to this cat's house. So we was really fortunate that we didn't get clunked in the head for them turntables.
Right.
And so what ended up happening is, this guy, this DJ, you know, because at that time, yeah, I had 2 turntables, but I didn't have turntables like these, like, you know, Technique 1200. And at that time, it was very hard outside of the tri-state area. You couldn't find a mixer that had a crossfader on it. All of the faders were up and down faders. That's why you see a lot of DJs that, you know, DJ like this with their hands going up and down, because those are the only kind of mixers that was available to most markets. If you, you know, and so the dude said, okay, man, you got to get a mixer that has a crossfader, so you'll be able to control 2 records at the same time. So I dug where he was coming from, and then he showed me a couple of different little tricks and this and that. Because of, you know, like I said, I'd never used a mixer like that before, and his name was Tretch DJ CB. So that's where I get my Tretch DJ, Mr. Mixx. I was a protege of his, learning that part. So once I got an understanding of knowing how to use the crossfader and this and that, and knew that I had to, only could scratch with one hand at one time, but he made me understand that you need to learn how to scratch with both of your hands. So
Right.
I was able to do, through him, I learned and practiced and did that. So the way that the record, and at that time also, I bought some records when I was in New York, and I always knew about Dolomite and Richard Pryor and all of these crazy records. So I bought a gang of Dolomite records when I was in New York and brought them out to California with me when I was, got stationed. So when I was doing mixes, mixtapes and stuff like, cassette tapes in the room, I would practice my scratching using the Dolomite records, the little crazy quotes and stuff that he was saying on the records. I was practicing with those quotables in my barracks. So when we got to Miami, when we seen how wild the dudes is dancing with the girls and this, that, and the third, I, took the fact of using the stuff that Dolomite was saying. It was so, so much of the same kind of activity that these people was on in these parties. I would just, listen to the different parts and pieces and pull from those things and cut those parts into the actual record. So a lot of, and nobody was messing with Dolomite or any of that stuff at that time, because at that time it was still a clean game. You know what I'm saying? The way that they was, ghetto nasty in Miami, it seemed like it was a perfect segue to use these type of records to amplify what was already going on with the thought process, the Miami thought process.
And so, man, them cuts were so damn clean. And at that tempo, because at that time, you had records that were going on at that tempo, but very few DJs were cutting at that tempo.
Right, exactly. And at that time, there really, it's really funny because, like, not until like when we did that, there was only one other dude that was kind of lightweight, touching on like what it was that I ended up creating, but I created it in the way that I did it. There was a group called Original Concept.
Come on, man. Come on.
Dr. Dre from New York. The Dr. Dre from New York.
Dr. Dre.
Called, Original Concept. They had a record, Acknowledge Me and Can You Feel It and Pump That Bass and all of these other records. They were the ones that was doing that part of the game in New York. Nobody, like I say, nobody knew who anybody was because there wasn't really pictures of guys. They were just 12-inch singles. You didn't know what anybody looked like. You just heard what it is that they did on the records. So,
and let me put that in perspective too, because Dr. Dre just did an interview not too long ago claiming that Knowledge Me was one of the most sampled records ever. And it's crazy because I remember going through, growing up DJing and having that Pump That Bass record, and Knowledge Me was the B-side. And we'd never played that record. We played it, every now and then we play it, but we never played that record. But the 808s that it had on there and them kicks and the way the things that were knocking in that Knowledge Me was not New York. It had no New York to it at all other than New Yorkers made it. That was like some of the fossils or some of the ingredients that you would add to bass music.
Right. Exactly. Basically what happened back in those days, the 808 drum machine was used on a lot of records, and that was the other thing. Back in those days, they were trying to make it seem like the 808 drum machine was like a play machine, like because it didn't sound like real drums. There were other drum machines like the Oberheim DMX and the Linn drum that sounded like more traditional drums, like a drum.
And shout out to Linn drums because Prince used the hell out of them damn
Right.
Lindrums. And they did sound, they sounded electronic, but for a lot of the R&B artists, they used that Lindrum to kind of get some of that 808 punch to it while having it sound a little more realistic.
Right.
But when we're talking about that 808, and I know what years you're talking about, because it was that 84, 85 window,
right,
where it seemed like every record that came out, even Rock the Bells had to change it. He remixed that song. The remix was like, oh snap, we got 808s. So, and
right.
they changed.
Well, and that's the thing. This is the thing. I could say that between what Dr. Dre and them and Rick Rubin them was doing, they were the only outlet. New York was the only place where records was coming out of at that time. Even though Los Angeles was coming out with records, they weren't being made like that. If anything, LA was mimicking kind of like what Pretty Tony and them was doing in Miami. Egyptian Lover stuff kind of sounded like that. The combination of what they were doing in Miami and what Kraftwerk and them was doing in Germany. So that's what a lot of their stuff was. But the 808 drum machine, matter of fact, give me 1 second. I'm gonna get you the miniature 808 drum machine, and I'll be able to explain it better.
See, man, look here, man. You see what's going on, man? You hear what's going on, Orlando, man? This man, the legend of the 808, man, he's gonna bring out a little 808 just so that you can get it nice and clear. You hear this, man? Shout out to Chuck E. Trees. Shout out to my man Ricky Rick on the checker. Shout out to DJ Sandman. Let's go.
Okay, so this is the drum machine. This is the 808 drum machine, but it's a miniature version of it. The original one is way bigger, but the landscape of it is the same. So all of these different little buttons down here are buttons that's for the actual drum sounds. All of these different buttons right here. So and these different knobs that's up here represent the sounds that's on the machine. Let me get my glasses. I can't see shit. Hold on. So the first thing is the accent button. The next one is the bass drum button. So it has a level, and then it has a decay, and then it has a what is it? Okay, no, tone and decay. So what most people was doing, they would have the decay knob like at 12 o'clock, and the tone at 12 o'clock. So that gives you a solid punch. But when you turn this damn knob all the way to the right, it overmodulates. That's where the boom sound comes from. So, so what ended up happening is most of the people thought that it was just too much bass, and it didn't sound like it was a legible recording if you did that. So a lot of people just kept the kick sound of it, as a solid punch. So I know that either Dr. Dre or Rick Rubin them, they was experimenting with MIDI of loading the 808 machine with other drum machines and doing like triggers to where you could trigger this machine along with other drum things. So like I would say the record that Dr. Dre did in 1985, Can You Feel It? 1985. He had the bass all the way turned up. You know what I'm saying? And the same thing with Rick Rubin when he did the Run DMC record Together Forever. So those records played very well on Luke's sound system. So it let me know at that time. I said, okay, when you hear it out of speakers like this, and right at that time, that's when people start getting their little car systems and all of that with the 15-inch woofers in the back and all of that kind of stuff. I knew that it was going to be a market for it because the dope boys that was in Miami at that time had setups in them, big old Fleetwood Bromes where they had the big ass trunks where they could sit those speakers in there and you hear people booming down the street. So I already knew that when we came down there, that was going to be the thing. So when we went in, just like I said, when we went in to do the studio work, made sure that the 808 thing was turned all the way up, and using the cuts and scratches to accentuate the thought process of the Miami Cats and the Miami Chicks, and then we put it all in one big old pot, and that became the hybrid what Miami bass is. Even though MC Shy D had some records out before us, they weren't like that.
Shout out to MC Shy D. I'm gonna have him on next week as well. And yes, to your point, what he was doing was absolutely insane. But the Luke Skywalker stamp sound, bass sound, that was its own world. That was its own universe.
Yeah, he ended up coming over and doing some records with us.
Right.
Right. And the record Gotta Be Tough, I programmed that track. That was the first time that me and him worked together. And the funny thing about it, the scratches that's on there, I didn't do the scratches. Shy D did the scratches on that particular record.
No, man.
I programmed.
Hold on, man. We going. This the History Channel right now, man. Okay. This man done said everything I say has got to be tough. He scratched those scratches on there.
Yeah, he did those scratches. He was a DJ along with being a MC, and he knew what records that he wanted to scratch and all of that, and brought the stuff down. But he didn't know how to program the machine, so
right.
I programmed the track and all of that. And the funny thing, back in those days, there were samplers, but they was too damn expensive. Nobody could afford one at that time. So what did we have to do? We had to get them records and time it up with the beat. And just like if we was DJing and doing a blend, we had to blend the sample into the beat. And you do that on one track and then push record and do that to one track, and then you go to the next track and do it again and again and again and again until you have it every place that you need to have it on there. But it had to be blended in with the turntables. It couldn't be, we didn't have enough money to learn how to work samplers back then.
Man, talk about DJs putting in work, man. That's what the DJ was supposed to do. They were the first beat machines, man.
Right,
I mean, outside of the beatbox.
Right.
But, okay, we went to Shy D. I got to ask you this. What went into the idea of 2 Live Is What We Are's album cover? Because that is an iconic album cover. Not only does it have Pac Jam on it, not only does it have the Jeep Cherokee everybody wanted in Florida, not only did it have the Miami jackets, but it was so Florida. It was just insane. What went into that idea of that album cover?
Well, we just knew that, and Luke also knew that we didn't really have no competitors at that time, because back in those days, Miami was like a no man's land as far as rappers. There was no such thing as no particular rapper in Miami. There was guys that Mike was saying a little stuff here and there on some records, but it wasn't no particular person that you could say, okay, that's such and such group, and that's such. It was nothing like that. It's like we came to an area where that part of the movie hadn't got developed yet. So we were emulating and imitating, the attitudes of the average Miami cat. He got his arms folded and, got his pants off his ass, you know what I'm saying? And Mark, Mark did that. And Mark was already wild and crazy anyway. So, and he was the youngest out of the crew. So he was just the more about it one, you know what I'm saying? And
right.
Like you say, the funny thing about it, by the time that we did the album, Throw the D had already been out like 9-10 months. So when we were doing shows and things like that, some of the records that ended up being on the 2 Live Is What We Are album, we was performing Hey We Want Some Pussy, and we were performing 2 Live Is What We Are. straight out of the drum machine before we actually went into the recording studio and made the actual records for real. It was just, I programmed the beats and they were just going off of, the beat running and this and that. So, like I said, we had like a 10-month run to have an understanding of the dynamic of what we had made happen. You know what I'm saying? So, Throw the D came out in '86. Two Live is What We Are came out January of '87. So at that time we had our swag up. And at that time we also the Miami Hurricanes, with Luke knew a lot of the young dudes that was playing for the Hurricanes. At that time they would come to the parties and hang out and this, that, and the other. And they won the national championship. So he was a big Miami fan. So we ended up getting the gear, and we're kind of like the first ones to wear, college gear on album covers, or to actually performing the stuff. Most of the New York guys, they was Kangled out, they was Gucci'd out or whatever. They was wearing, fashion, but it was from a guy named Dapper Dan that was making all of the outfits that they would go in Harlem and have custom made, they was bootlegging, but it was by the way that they was doing the stuff, it looked fly once they got it done. You could get it right, like the sweatsuits or leather or whatever. So they was on that, but we was on the sports stuff because the Hurricanes was winning, and Luke was a big fan of theirs. All of us became fans of the college team. So we start wearing that gear because it looked good as a group, and that was and one thing I can't say as far as Luke is concerned with that part of it. Maybe with some of the groups that he's seen come down, he's seeing that they're not really uniform. They not they kind of like maybe the records or something, but their visual presence may not have been all the way right. So he used the the UM gear, which Miami is like one of the first places, because I don't really remember seeing gear as much as like how the Miami gear was. It wasn't really like that anywhere else. You couldn't go to different parts of the country and there was a gang of Notre Dame gear, or you could go to this area and there was a whole bunch of USC gear, and it wasn't like that. Miami is kind of like, a flat out trendsetter with that part of the game, for sure.
Right. My boy Rick, he's asking, he remembers seeing you and Two Live Crew out at, I believe it was Electric Avenue in Orlando. And you and Two Live Crew and Shadi performed that night.
Right.
And you were apparently scratching. He's asking, you're apparently scratching with your dick and doing tricks.
Right.
Was that a part of your repertoire, being able to do that?
Yeah, for sure. That was, like I say, once we got, a reputation of having an understanding that it was going to be a nasty situation, once we had an understanding that we were going to start making records from that standpoint based off of the fact of the Miami atmosphere, I just thought of all of the different things that could be, viewed as that. And I started practicing this routine. I put my dick up against the crossfader, and I was able to move the crossfader with my dick scratching back and forth and all of that. So that became a spectacle. And, one thing, I will say about Luke also, he had an understanding of how to be a MC showman, a hype man. I guess you call it hype man nowadays, but at that time, it was like he was the master of ceremonies of the show. You know what I'm saying? So he, you would call it like, I guess, like the ringmaster of a circus. And
right.
he put the hype on.
And that's definitely what the hell Luke was at all times throughout his entire career. He's always been running a circus, and I think that is pretty damn dope. Considering some people are just built that way. They're blessed that way to approach things and find a lane. Like, he wasn't rapping, he wasn't DJing, but he made his presence known on all of those records, and it to me it felt like he was rapping. It felt like he was DJing. It felt like he was producing. It felt like he was just as
Right,
much.
and the funny thing about that is that, you know, the funniest thing about, you know, you can't make this shit up with the group. Now, the one thing I will say is that when we were doing the shows in the early part, in the early, you know, first couple of shows we was doing, we didn't really have no particular stage presence. You know,
Right.
Brother Marquise and Kid Ice, they weren't talkative on the stage. They would do the songs, but in between the songs and the breaks, they wouldn't say anything. They'd be, you know, just bopping around. And when it came for their rap part, they would do their rap parts. So they weren't mingling with the crowd. Because in the earlier days, it was just me, Mark, and Chris on stage. Luke wasn't on stage. He was doing, like I told you, he was managing the situation. Right. You know, he was in, you know, on the side of the stage. So he's feeling like, well, damn, man, these guys, you know, records, I mean, shows is the way that you're going to be able to get more records sold. So if you got a wax show, you're not going to sell no records, even though the records might sound good. The hype ain't going to be there for a person to want to go buy your record versus buying Heavy D's record. So you start going out there and talking to the crowd and this, that, and the other, doing the stuff that he would do as a ghetto style DJ guy, but he was just doing it in front of the stage versus being behind the DJ booth. So it became a great combination, and it wasn't something, you know, he felt like it was something that he needed to do to save what was going on with the group. You know what I'm saying? As far as the performances was concerned, he wasn't even looking at trying to be no rapper or be on stage. You know, he did it out of necessity.
Right. Right. And I think that really, you know, to that point, you know, invention is necessity is the mother of invention. You guys were able to create a space in which a man that wasn't rapping, wasn't DJing, and wasn't producing was just as valuable to the record as everyone else was. And I think that's completely amazing. And it's kudos to what you guys brought to the table, because when we're talking about True Live Is What We Are, which is probably some of the most, I mean, it's a classic album. You guys had traditional hip hop on there, at least traditional hip hop in the sense of Miami style hip hop. And then y'all had bass, the birth of bass music, all on one record. And it still had this sound of the 305 that to this day, most places strive to achieve that, right? Like most places, like a Bone, you know, when you hear Bone, that's the sound of Cleveland. When you hear NWA, that's the sound of California, sound of Compton. Too Short, sound of Oakland. You know, Busta Rhymes, the sound of New York. You guys were able to achieve that at an early age before people were even ready for bass to travel as far as it did, going to Atlanta and Houston and how it traveled so far. Talk about Move Something and that album that was just completely, it took you guys from True Live Is What We Are, which was like, that was part of the Florida experience. You went to Disney, you went to Miami, and you had a True Live Crew record. Like that was a part of the experience. But then y'all come out with Move Something and Me So Horny, and you got the whole nation looking at you. Talk about that.
Well, basically what ended up happening, at that time, you got to remember, you know, the first album didn't have a video. So all of this stuff is word of mouth.
Right.
Nobody.
And that was a Florida thing. Like Florida moved like that. Like Florida supported its people. Like I mean, everybody I knew in Orlando had a 2 Live Crew album. Like that's just what it was. Like I mean, we had Run DMC, we had Public Enemy, and we had 2 Live Crew. Like you had to have all that.
Right. And I think the thing at that time was that they looked at 2 Live Crew in the same way as they looked at those other groups. They didn't look at those groups like they were bigger or greater or better than us.
Nah.
We were like the representative of this part of the country, you know, of Florida. We were that group, you know what I'm saying, that was on the same space, the same level, if not better than what those guys were doing.
Dude, you guys were the sound not only of Miami, but you were the sound of Florida. Like that was. I mean, people used to come out and be like, "Oh man, what you want that booty music for?" And then we take them to the club,
right?
And they'd be like, "Oh, okay, I see your point." And then realize what the hell we were doing,
right?
Why we were listening to that music. But it wasn't even just that. I mean, like I said, you know, you can listen to a Public Enemy album. One of the greatest albums ever made was It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. But during that time, you guys were out and the speakers not different.
Right.
When you came on. Like the whole car moved.
Right.
The whole car moved. I mean, so we had our own stuff. And like I said, that is everything. When you're trying to have an identity, you know, and especially when New York ran so much for so long, and they were able to kind of come to places and be like, yeah, I see what you guys are doing, but check this out. But Florida was able to have that same statement.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, I see what you guys are doing, but check this out.
Right, exactly, and that's true because you know. You got to also remember too, for all the people. I mean, we're in 2021 right now, and it ain't nothing to travel. Back then, the only people that was traveling was entertainers and dope boys. Nobody was really moving around to know what was really going on somewhere else for real. You just had to have the imagination of what you heard on these records. You picked up New York slang, but you picked it up off the records, not because you got some cousins and you went to Brooklyn or whatever. You didn't. People wasn't traveling like that until crack cocaine hit a particular way, and guys that never had no money before was able to start moving around and flossing, and people start getting an understanding of what people in California is doing and what people in Georgia is doing and what people in Kansas is doing. Nobody really knew. Everybody just knew what was going on in their atmosphere. And it's kind of cool that it was like that because New York had the right thought process of feeling like, okay, we created this stuff. There ain't no other place that's doing like what we doing.
Right. Right. But and I say that being funny because it is funny. Hindsight is 20/20, and when you look back at it, all of it is comedy, and comedy is tragedy. And I remember hearing stories about. Luke would go, you guys would go up to New York and open up for these New York guys, and they would look at you guys like, what the fuck are we open? Why the fuck are they performing? Like, what is this shit? And it was that kind. I mean, there was that superiority complex in hip hop for a long time because it was deserving. I mean, yeah. There wasn't rock hymns just popping out of everywhere at that time. There wasn't, Big Daddy Kane's and Cool G raps just coming out of everywhere at that time. So, but I guess the irony was that we respected what New York was doing, but we felt like what we were doing was just as valuable or just as a contribution, as much valuable contribution.
The thing was that Florida was able to relate the slang, the lifestyle, all of that stuff they dealt with the New York stuff because it was something that was being commercialized through film and TV. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And you know, Kango hats and shit like that. So you know,
Right.
it was something that was more of a fantasy more than really being able to relate. They can relate to Two Live Crew though.
Well, you know, and I'm agreeing with you, and I'm kind of just expanding on it as well because you know when we're talking about, like I said, one thing that you know about New York clubs, you were gonna feel that hip hop experience,
Right.
but for the most part, everybody had their clothes on.
Right.
Right?
Well, I mean, the temperature is gonna make you keep your clothes on. Florida.
Right. The temperature, everything, right. But when you came down to Florida and you seen that the way they was dancing, they weren't dancing like that in New York.
Right.
They weren't dressed like that. They weren't biker shorts
Right.
and had all their business exposed and you guys not only you know the feeling was there, but there was no soundtrack. You guys became literally the soundtrack of
Right.
the
Exactly.
feeling.
Yeah, it was amplified. We
Right, it was just an amplifier. Like they don't want to wear. You don't want to wear a sweater to a club. You
right.
know, like they wanted to dress how they wanted to dress, and so when people from New York started coming down and seeing what was going on, and seeing how the music helped that, oh my god, it was a wrap.
Yeah.
I remember that move something. Literally, it came on. In my recollection, it felt like it came on every 10 minutes.
You know, that's because they had the video jukebox. You can keep ordering it. Those days were like great days, man. Those days were great because once we couldn't get on MTV or anything like that. Even though we have Fat Five Freddy came down and covered the group. I don't know if it was a paid promotion or whatever. This, that, and the other. Luke made that happen, and we actually was one of the first people that was on MTV from a rap situation. That they was down there for the whole show, and in Miami, we introduced some videos and this, that, and the other. That I thought that was extremely cool. But our video was so hot, we couldn't really get no play outside.
Hey, let's talk about that for a minute, because the video person that wound up becoming the most famous out of that was Cindy.
Right,
like,
exactly.
And this girl literally became a star of sorts because, like I said, it's crazy when you look back at it. People up north had this perception that girls were a certain way,
right?
And that girls only looked a certain way because they wore all these clothes. You didn't know how they looked. Right. I mean, it's easy now. They look like that everywhere, but you know, when you're wearing 100 pounds of clothes on, you're not going to see that. Right. But Cindy was like this kind of like exotic looking person.
Right.
And that threw people for a loop. And especially for MTV, I mean, for MTV to even play that song, it didn't play that long. Like it didn't have a long shelf life because obviously of the things to come. But for what that was at that moment and at that time, that was groundbreaking. Like you guys opened a lot of doors for a lot of people in hip hop that I don't know. They may never say thank you, but you know, I can say thank you because you guys didn't even know you were doing it, but you did it in a way to allow freedom of speech because they wanted to kill hip hop from day one. They just didn't know how to do it. And then when you guys came out, you guys became the O.J. Simpson. Okay, we're gonna go after them. and make all rap sound like that. You know, like all rap look like that.
Right.
And I remember during that time, it was like they were just attacking you guys for no reason.
Well, they had good reason. They had good reason, and I'm gonna tell you what the reason is. Back in the day, they knew how to control rock and roll because it was musicians that was playing the stuff. A lot of session players, this, that, and other. They knew how to make the stuff, manufacture it, this, that, and the third. They didn't know how to do this, and they didn't know the discernment of a good record versus a bad record. That's what they was really hot about. They figured if they can really control it, they're gonna make it be an issue. They're gonna make it be a problem.
Look here, man. It was you. It was NWA. It was Public Enemy. That all an X-Clan. All out at the same time.
Yeah.
And now that sounds like a blip. But let me tell you something. In the grounds of drawing outside the lines when it comes to hip hop, like that, all of those contributions at that moment,
right,
so incredible. Not only for artistic freedom, but the freedom of the mind,
right?
Because we were coming out of contrition. People were trying, to your point, control the narrative of all music. Hip hop was the fucking rebel. It started out as the rebel. To me, it's always been the rebel. We've conformed in a lot of ways to what is the opposite of what hip hop has been. But yeah, you guys were a part of this wave that will never be done again.
You know who the intervener was of hip hop not being able to be a rebel anymore? The money from movies.
Ha! Ha! Talk about it. Talk about it.
Just think about it. Ice Cube told me when he did Boys in the Hood, he got $100 grand for 3 months worth of work. So, and it's guaranteed. So, and he was with a group. There's no way in the world that you was gonna get $100,000 by yourself in no group.
Right.
You understand? So the fact of him being able to get on that way, and then slowly but surely, you know, Queen Latifah, Tupac, this one, that, you know, why you think Mos Def ain't making no damn records? Because the movie money, you get the money right away, and it ain't no risk. You ain't got to go out, to place being on the road and this, that. Movies was the real intervener of the rebel being a little more tame because the money was in place. The visuals of what they were doing, you know, they were able to get their money from making movies more so than messing around with these records. That's really what started it.
Right. And you just dropped some bombs. You heard that, Orlando? This is where the market right now is going to. And conveniently, as the market heads towards visuals, we also are seeing the drop or the access to visuals. Because what we're doing right now, you know, 10 years ago, maybe even 20, would have been Steven Spielberg technology. Right. And we're seeing kind of all of this stuff playing out in real time. But once again, necessity is the mother of invention. You guys made something that was needed. You guys could have said you were from anywhere. In fact, you guys could have claimed California more than anything else.
And the funny thing about it, like what it is you're just saying, you know, the music and the attitude is of the world. Nobody just didn't know it was of the world at the time we were doing it. It probably would have got embraced better by the New Yorkers. But because there's always been different people from different places that was able to mesh into what it was that's happening. It seems like Florida people always get a black eye in the game when it comes to certain stuff, even from whether it's Betty Wright or Casey and the Sunshine Band or whatever other groups that was out of Florida at that time. We always, we always got our shine on, but we never was able to stay in the light for whatever reason. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's something in the water that, we go to other places that we're just not, fathomable to conform or this or that. I don't know what it is.
Well, Florida is in many ways one of the only place I could ever compare it to when I think of Florida and I think of the chemistry of Florida is New York City. Because of the diversity that it has.
Right.
Florida is, New York is a walking contradiction because there's so many cultures from all over the world at the same time as it being the birthplace of so many things.
Right.
It could have been the abortion of many things.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
right.
Things go there to die too. And Florida is like that. You wanna kill your career quick? Say you're from Orlando, right? Or say you're from Jacksonville, or say you're from Tampa, right?
Right.
Miami fought tooth and nail. We watched it in real time. We watched as Miami fought for its respect. People thought it was just a strip club city. And yeah, you guys ain't really about that hip hop shit. And, in 360, in hindsight, looking at it, today, most rappers, if not live in Miami, want to go to Miami.
Right, because where they come from is not of the same, surface narrative.
Right.
My girl, she's I'm in Cleveland. She's from Ohio. She does, she likes being in Miami because she likes the freeness of it and all of that. But she wouldn't dare be caught being a particular way, like how they are in Florida and Ohio, because the aesthetic is just flat out different.
Right.
So the people that want to flock to Miami is because they want that aesthetic in their life more so than where it is that they are at the moment.
And you just really gave a great contrast because Cleveland, people ain't moving to Cleveland. Okay, first of all, not. I don't give a fuck what we're talking about tonight. They're not moving to Cleveland. That's not what's happening. Cleveland is a town in which you grew up there or your job moved you there.
Right.
Or you married into being there.
Right, exactly.
You're not going to Cleveland. No one's going, I'm going to Cleveland. Where you going, dog? Yeah, man, I'm going to No, man, I'm going to Cleveland, man. That's the shit. Like, nobody's going there. But that's fine. Because that is part of the beauty of what hip hop is, right? Like Bone, and when I got Crazy Bone coming on in March, and I'm looking forward to that. Crazy Bone and Bone, they could have said they were from Compton, and nobody would have
ever questioned it. Right?
Nobody would have ever questioned it, and it would have made sense based on their connection to Eazy-E.
Right.
And that would have been the end of story.
Right.
And everyone would be okay. And I would never even fucking say, "No, man, you really from Cleveland." No. Because I understand the mentality. There's a lot going into that. You want to be they were before LeBron was even around.
Right.
I'm pretty sure anybody like to be from Cleveland now, given that LeBron's from there, but they took the chance. And they
Right.
said, no, fuck that, Easy. Don't give us no goddamn Compton. We want Cleveland.
Right.
And to this day, if anyone is competing with LeBron in Cleveland, it's Bone.
Yeah, but what's really funny about that though, I mean, they love their prodigal sons from those guys being from here. But just I guess what it is that there's some, Cleveland is an older city,
Yes.
based off of factories and
yes.
cool
No.
stuff.
Be honest, bro. This is the Midwest. That's what the Midwest is. Period. From Cleveland.
But I'm saying it from a guy that didn't have any clue about the aesthetic of Cleveland until I've been up here a while. I'm gonna tell you something real funny. When you go into the grocery store and you see, Stouffer's chicken or Bird's Eye, vegetables and this, that, other. You see these kind of places when you're driving along the freeway, that these actual factories are up here. I would never see nothing like that in California. You damn sure ain't gonna see it in Florida. But up here, you see all of those types of places. Nestle is up here. Couple of different things. So it's a whole. The thought process is just a working thought process here.
Right. They're not expecting to be anything other than what Cleveland has already been. Exactly. I lived in Kansas City for 12 years, and Kansas City, Missouri is literally the equivalent of the mentality in Cleveland and the mentality in like a St. Louis, shout out to Ellie, or the mentality in a Chicago, even.
Buffalo. Detroit is the exception.
Detroit. Yeah, I mean, Chicago wants to be an East Coast city. Right. The problem is that you leave 10 minutes outside of the city, you're in the Midwest again. Right. It's a contradiction. They want to be East Coast, but no, they're Midwest. They just act like an East Coast city. Same thing with St. Louis. It acts like an East Coast city, but it's really a Midwest city. And when you live there, you know it. Like, the Midwest moves a little bit differently. To your point, they don't expect to be stars. You living in New York or Miami, you talk to 3 or 4 people, one of those motherfuckers is going to be like, man, I want to be a star. Easy.
And feel like they can get it done, too.
Right. In Kansas City, you a star because you work for Tyson Chicken. I just got hired at Tyson, son. I'm working for Ford. You know what I'm saying? It's a different movement. It's a different energy. Right. But I respect it. I respect it because, like I said, that just means it's all the more harder to come out of something like that. And it requires a certain type of courage. And you guys did that for Miami. You guys opened the door for a LaJuan Love, an Ann Quet, Professor Griff. You guys fucking pressed up a Professor Griff album, which Pawns in the Game. Tell me the truth behind that, man. Were you there when that record was made?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
Yeah, basically, Griff had had made a quote that wasn't too in favor to the New York record companies, and they had him ousted out of the group, or Public Enemy. I don't know if Public Enemy was going to lose their deal or whatever, but they made sure that they removed him from the situation. And since out of all there was some New York groups he was cool with. Heavy D them was cool. Public Enemy them was cool. There was a handful of them. So when Griff had the issue, he was able to holler at Luke, and Luke, gave him a record deal based off of the fact that people knew who he was with the S1Ws and all of that.
Did you make that beat, man?
Huh?
Did you make that Pawns in the Game, bro?
No, Griff came down with his own crew of people, I was helping do some of the stuff in the studio with them because they recorded that at our facility. But
Right.
I wasn't really doing no production. I think I did one remix of something that they did, but they, and that was the lovely part. Skywalker Records, we definitely, if I would have been more up on the business aspect of it, because I was just flat out, the music guy. Luke was in
Right.
the office, I was in the studio, but if I would have had more savvy about the business aspect of it, me and Luke definitely could have been, L.A. Reid and Babyface before LaFace showed up in Atlanta. We definitely was.
Dude, you know how hard it is? I mean, shout out to all my DJs because you know exactly what I'm about to say. There was a point in every DJ's life which made our lives easier. When once you knew a label was quality, you didn't even question what was on it.
Right, exactly.
Sleeping Bag Records, Def Jam, Loud, and Luke. Like anything that had that Luke label on it, I just knew it was coming from a great place.
Right, exactly.
Who made that LaJuan Love record?
No, I did those records. All that whole LaJuan album.
No, man. Yo, that's breaking news. Let's go to breaking news right now. For all my peoples out here in Orlando that didn't know, he made LaJuan Love. Let's go to breaking news.
Hey, yo.
Breaking news never stops.
Turn this motherfucking sound up, man. Blast this is turn the whole this up.
Everybody say yeah.
All of it, the whole album.
Oh my God, man.
The whole album. And the funniest thing about, LaJuan, he I don't even know where LaJuan came from. I guess he was not too far from he used to hang around the Pac Jam, but not as a customer because he was like only 11, 12 years old.
Right.
I think he met Mark some kind of way. I don't really exactly know how the scenario came into play, but I think maybe they was like battling or something, and Mark discovered him, and he used to come over. He used to bring him over to the apartment, and I would program stuff on him and this, that, and other, and it was just like I say, he was he could have been like just as big as a Crisscross or whatever, but we were a company that had a lot of diversification, but you could only in those days when there was no such thing as hip hop radio, you had to make a choice. Which, you got a whole bunch of horses in your stable, but which horse are you riding? And that's
right. No, and let's explore that, bro. Because let me tell you something, man. I don't know other than him saying, I know that was a Stevie Wonder sample in that beginning fucking whatever he said in the beginning. I remember. After that, I don't remember. Because that fucking beat was so hard. I would just play the instrumental. I couldn't get off that instrumental, bro.
Right. But if you're a DJ or whatever, and that's the other thing that was part of my my thought process. I've always felt like the records that I used, the sample or whatever, they had to be a flavorful thing from back in the day. It had to, it wasn't just, me doing the beats on the drum machine is one thing, but the samples had to be relevant. It had to be something that you were aware of, some kind of way.
Right. So we got the LaJuan Love. What else were you behind that no one knows about? And that was your production.
All of the Anquiet stuff except for I Will Always Be There For You. That was a Michael Sterling experiment. The girls wasn't even thinking about doing no singing or anything like that. You know how you be in the studio just before you getting ready to rap and this, that. They be humming and singing, I'm not your superwoman or whatever record that was hot, with the young kids. So he decided that, you know, he wanted to experiment. He wrote a song for them and had them, you know, sing out the parts. He piloted the stuff, and then they followed what it was that he was singing, and, you know, made that record became what it became. So it was just so many magic moments that people don't even know exist because we were the front runner in Florida. We didn't really have no particular competitors, but nobody was thinking about filming nothing. Nobody was really thinking about having publicists sit up in there and run their mouth about us 24/7. That was if there was any fumble, it was that.
What about Poison Clan?
Poison Clan, that's another. I found Poison Clan. That was my group, but I wasn't on my business. I didn't sign them to me. I just brought them to the company, but I knew the flavor of what it is that those guys knew how to do. They were some high school cats that was in a nightclub that they wasn't supposed to be in, trying to win some money at the Gong Show. And when I seen them doing their little thing, I just flat out approached them and said, "You guys want to make some records?" "Yeah, we want to make some records." So I gave them my number and this, that, and the other, and sent them like 3 beats on a cassette, and they wrote up some stuff to it, this, that, and the other. Next thing you know, I got these guys in the studio and we're knocking the stuff out. The album didn't even take a month to get done. It was just that tight and that hungry. And it was cool for me because I was able to do another set of skills with them that I couldn't do with Two Live Crew. It was just a different.
Right. It's what about Home Team?
Home Team, that's one of the guys from Poison Clan, Debonair, and his brother.
Debonair. Shout out to Debonair, man. And that was during the time that we were able to get on tour with you guys during that band from the USA tour. And I was a DJ for Little Cochise at the time, and you guys were doing this South tour from North Carolina, Greensboro, Dallas, and everything in between. And that's when Home Team came out, and I was like, man, this is to this day, Home Team, that they only released to me one record.
Yeah, that's because
that record is a classic. It's pick it up.
Right, and the funny thing about it, Debonair learned all of his. He did the production on that project, but it was because he was sitting up around me, and I taught him how to, how to program the drum machine, how to sample, and all that stuff. So it was really heartening, even though I wasn't with the company at the time that they were doing that stuff. It was really cool to know that this youngster learned how to do what it is that I knew how to do, putting tracks together and things like that. He was able to do that. I was really proud of him.
Devastator, Poison Clan. That was one of the icons of the South as well. That doesn't get the props that I think they deserve as well, because they were the new school generation before the Trick Daddies that brought in this new sound of what was already a great formula, but gave it more of a Florida sound.
Well, the biggest issue, man, is that it's just like I say. We're the only team in town. It's like we're the Yankees, but we're the only team. The Yankees ain't playing the Orioles or the Blue Jays or the Houston Astros. We're the only goddamn team. So, and Luke is trying to manage everything and trying to, do this, that, and the third. But it's just like I say, there wasn't a whole bunch of other hybrid companies around to even take, there was a lot of stuff that, that we messed with, didn't have the shot or chance to do, because just like I say, it was still pre-hip hop radio. It was only certain markets that was playing hip hop music over the air. The records had to be sold, which means that they had to be marketed and promoted in the record stores. But you had to, like I said, you had to pick your poison. You had to deal with your biggest group to get space to be able to be in those stores and figure out, is Poison Clan going to get the promotion or Two Live Crew going to get the promotion? Two Live Crew's going to get it, and
Right, right.
in the whole business. But their records were strong enough to be able to make people want to hear what it was that was going on with them. So it ended up still working out, but we weren't like Def Jam, but Def Jam was marketed and distributed by Columbia, so they have big muscle for all of their releases. We didn't have that kind of muscle. The muscle came from out of the record itself.
Right.
You know, the records, you know, convinced people that Luke was doing the marketing and promoting with to be able to go on the records. You know,
Luke was a true independent in that regard.
Right, exactly.
You know, what did you feel? And I have to ask you this because you're connected to the West Coast. What did you feel when you heard that Chronic album, which was one of the greatest classic albums, you know, that's ever been made? What did you feel when you heard shots coming from the West Coast towards Miami and towards you guys?
It was really towards Luke. It wasn't really towards Miami. It was really towards Luke. And then also, you got to remember, outside of Florida, California was our next biggest market. We were, you know, we had our thumb in California's ass at that time. Motherfuckers knew us. Period. There was no question. No doubt, most of the records outside of Florida were sold in California. So the thing that happened is that when Luke went solo on his solo album, there was a record that he had that he said something about Dre. That's right when what record was it that came out? It was something.
Because y'all opened up for NWA, right?
Huh?
Y'all opened up for NWA in the beginning.
No, NWA. No, I'm gonna tell you a funny story.
Okay,
We
tell
were
me.
out in California, in Oakland, doing a show in San Jose. San Jose is maybe 45 minutes from Oakland. So we was out there early. We was doing a nightclub thing, but there was some promoters that we was dealing with out there that brought us out there to a show, and they wanted us to introduce NWA. You know, but we didn't know who the hell they were. We hadn't heard of them. Their records wasn't, you know, out. You know, you know, they weren't out in Florida at that time. It was just a California thing. So they bring us up on, you know, the promoters bring us up on stage and say, hey, yeah, man, you know, we out there kicking it. We going to San Jose to do a show. Y'all going to come down there and y'all come check us out, blah, blah, blah. It's a late night show. But, you know, we're here to introduce a group we ain't never heard of before. They call themselves NWA, blah, blah, blah. NWA, bring them out in. So when they start doing their, you know, beginning of their show, they were singing "We Want Some Pussy" on stage.
What?
That's why I know that the stuff that we was doing was highly influential to most everybody.
That's crazy, man.
We
Crazy.
didn't even know who these cats were. And that was before we heard anything about Dope Man, and all of that. Because we heard Dope Man when we was putting the Move Something album together. So
Right.
they was behind the curve as far as, you know, time frame, but maybe they weren't in California. It's just like I say, if you wasn't really traveling, you wouldn't really know what was going on in different places at that time. You just wouldn't know. The only way you kind of found out is by the distributors hustling the product around. So it would show up by the distributors getting it in certain little stores and things like that, and then stuff would be found out. The girl that I was dating that I eventually married, like in the early 90s, she had hit me to the Ghetto Boys. I didn't know shit about the Ghetto Boys, but they were doing okay in California, and she had a tape of this. And that's when, you know, we heard about Scarface and them and this, that, and other. And the funny thing about it, Scarface could have got signed to Luke Skywalker Records before he got with the Ghetto Boys. A guy named Lil Troy that was that put Scarface out in the beginning before he took him over there to the Ghetto Boys was a good friend of ours. When we come to Houston, he would come kick it, hang out, this, that, and the other, and he hollered at Luke about trying to get Scarface signed to Luke Skywalker Records. Luke passed. I don't even know if Luke passed on it, but we met them. But I guess by them being right there in Houston, you know, he was able to get the thing on with Rap A Lot, and that was just that. But we damn sure knew of him, you know, and the record was something. Mr. Scarface was a big record before he actually even got with the Ghetto Boys.
Man, when I first heard that, all I have in this world,
Right,
in my word, like that was so South, that was so Miami, that was you know, it sounded exactly like what going on
was in the area for sure.
Right. If you have, what was the inevitable thing that brought, I hate saying endings because there's not an ending, but what was the final kind of thing that kind of ended what we know to be, or what we grew up knowing as the 2 Live Crew? What was kind of like the ending of that in that regard?
Well, the thing is, it's like, I'll put it to you this way. We were so, well, I can speak for myself. I was truly green about business and positioning as far as how you deal with people that run a record company. Me and Luke had such a good rapport, or at least I believe it was a good rapport, because I was able to get whatever it is that I needed from it. The studio, my facility, you know, whatever it is that was going on in there, I was able to do. I didn't have no handcuffs on me. He wasn't on no extras with me with that. So when, you know,
and stop right there. What did you have when you're talking about the studio? What were you working with? And this is for all my gearheads. Did you have a 2-inch reel?
Oh yeah. You know,
working on an SSL board. What was some of the perks of having the facility, if you will? Talk about that.
You know, you had the 2-inch 24-track recording machine. You know, in New York, they would have, you know, 2 of those machines sometimes in studios where you was able to work with 48 tracks, but none of the stuff that we was doing, you know, required 48 tracks. So we had one machine in there. You know, we had I can't remember what kind of board it was in the beginning. I can't remember the name of it. We ended up getting an SSL board that got put in there, but I wasn't a engineer guy. I just, you know, all of my sounds that came out of the drum machines, whether it was the 808 drum machine, and some of the sounds got transferred into the SP1200 drum machine.
Oh my God! So you were an SP12 guy?
Yeah, it was a great machine to be able to do ideas, and like I said, before we had the samplers, we had to blend those records in off of the record.
Right, off the rip. And then SP12 came out.
Yeah, and that part of the movie way easier.
Right. So, the Roger Lynn MPC 60 came out.
Yeah, I never messed with those. I never messed with them because I didn't like the feel of them. I just always, I think they had more sampling stuff than the SP12.
Yeah, the only difference was the circuitry, which the MU, the SP12, its circuitry, like you could, it's kind of like the difference between working on a Neumann mic and a Sony mic. You'll notice the difference before you even EQ it.
Right.
Those are what those circuitries allowed. The MPC 60 was 12-bit, but it was cleaner. And the SP12 was 12-bit, but it was dirtier. And all those 8 outs, each one you plug into will sound different depending on the plug.
Right, exactly.
You know, and you know, it's so great talking about those machines because I would have never thought that you did some of the stuff that you did on an SB12, but it makes sense
Well,
because
the 12 wasn't, you know, that was the first one, and the 1200 actually had the, you know, the square floppies that you could actually physically put in it.
right, you talking about we're talking about the SB12 and the 1200, right? The blue one,
right. The blue one was the 12. The like the steel blue gray was the 1200.
Right. Which is the staple, or
Right.
supposedly the trademark of hip hop. But
right, exactly.
I hated that machine. I hated it from day one. For some reason, it didn't feel right to me because it wasn't pads. It was similar to just buttons. It was buttons.
Right. And that was the thing about and that was the thing about the MPC that
right for you. Right. And still, the first MPC I ever touched was the MPC 60.
Right.
And Shaq had one. He had the 62. Shaquille O'Neal. And I said, man, he's like, yo, bro, you look like you know how to work it. And I fronted like a motherfucker. I was like, yeah, I know how to work that shit. Just let me take it home real quick. And I didn't sleep for like 3 or 4 days. Like I was sitting there trying to figure that thing out. But the pads, it felt right. But and then I married just like the MPC philosophy. But I had a chance to buy a 1200, and you know, I look back on it like I wish I would have bought one just because I got an ASR 10 and an MPC. But yeah, it just those little buttons, man, it like threw me off, and I hated that.
Yeah, no, I get it. But just like I said, I was the first one to come through, and you know, just like I say, it's really funny. I got on the SB 1200 based off of the fact that when we went to I'll never forget it. We went to Delaware to do a show in Dover, Delaware, and that was the first time I heard "Make the Music with Your Mouth."
Oh my God, talk about it, brother. Please.
Now, the way that the record was created. And, you know, it's quite obvious I came up with records from the 60s and all of that. And I'm listening, and I'm saying, the way that record it sounds like, you know, an old school record from Stax Records or this, that, and the other, whatever. But that drum pattern damn sure ain't come off of a record from 1960-something. So,
right.
So I figured out what it was that they were doing. You know, they were chopping up the drum sounds off of those records from the 60s and making new kicks and snares out of them. So that's what got me wanting to have the 1200, not so much just for the sampling time of being able to sample, you know, 2.5 seconds of a record, but it was able to do the other creative drum stuff that drum machines didn't have those actual sounds. You were able to create new sounds based off of taking the kicks and snares off of old records.
Well, let me tell you something, my brother. And this is a go sit your ass down somewhere moment sponsored by my brother, Mr. Mixx. When I look back at my childhood, I thought you made every fucking record coming out of Luke Records.
Well, 95%.
Right, because that was my relationship on the foundation of what I thought the DJ was, right? Like I thought the DJ spent a lot of his time coordinating beats, whether it was on the turntables, because to your point, we didn't have the machines at that point.
Right.
I knew there's a like a mastermind behind this.
Right.
And it, you know, growing up as a DJ, I felt like it's the person that's not getting the shine. It's the person that's in the background, and we talk about it. But like I said, part of the DJ experience is where you heard your first cuts from. And when I heard you cut that like that I would
Right.
I would lie to you. That's dude. When I tell you that's my entire childhood in a nutshell, I want you to get ready to get off. Like, dude, man, like that's everything. The echo, the reverb, the way you cut it, the way you cut in the record. Like that's my entire childhood. When I chuck up my DJ style, I cannot tell my story about how I came to DJ without telling your story.
Right.
Like that's what I grew up on. Shout out to you. Shout out to Magic Mike. You know, when I heard Magic Mike, like I heard DJs Mixmaster Ice from New York.
Right.
That Roxanne was everything to me. But it became surreal once I heard the Mr. Mixes, the Magic Mike's cut. And I knew, like, yeah, New York's dope, but I want this shit. You know, I want my home shit because y'all was cutting on a different speed than everybody else. Y'all weren't even cut. Y'all weren't even in the same sentence that they were talking about.
Exactly, and that's true. That's true. I would say that you know, I think, you know, and I can't speak for Mike, but I know that I didn't necessarily have a big chip on my shoulder, but I did want to show that I belonged in the conversation of what Cats was doing. And the music put us in a position to be able to do that by being hyper, by being danceable, all of that stuff. You know what I'm saying? Because the thing is, before, you know, I was making records, I'm scratching to Egyptian Lovers beats. I'm scratching to Prince. I'm scratching to anything else that's up tempo. And
you know what's crazy about that statement, and I know it's a simple statement in this time. Like I get that. But what's crazy about that statement is that not everybody was doing that when we were coming up.
Right.
They weren't even trying, like that wasn't even a thought pattern.
Right.
Growing up for me, growing up in Florida, like that was a part of my thought process. Like, how can I scratch faster on a faster beat? Like the beat wasn't fast enough. We put that bitch on 45, speed it up. I mean, I till this day, I don't keep my records on the green. I don't do that. My records are like, you know, 2 or 3 notches from the highest speed.
Right.
Just because we move on a faster frequency out here in Florida.
Exactly. Right.
And people don't get that. Like it's not so much how it sounds, but it's the frequency. Like that frequency talks to me. When I first heard that Sunny View Records, which was home to Jam on It and Ghetto Jump,
right,
and Connie,
right,
that freestyle record. Rick's gonna kill me right now because I forgot the name of the record. You know what I'm talking about, Mr. Mixx. Connie.
Oh yeah,
funky little beat. Like that was like the sound of the entire peninsula growing up. It was just everything. Nothing sounded like that. That Sunny View label was everything. Everybody Ghetto Jump. Shout out to Jam Pony Express. Like that was everything for like all of us.
Right.
You know, and my man Ricky Rick, he was my first DJ, and I don't remember him scratching to anything slow. Like all we were scratching to was like up tempo, like just fast moving stuff. And I remember watching DJs, and they were scared to scratch that tempo because they knew they couldn't fuck with that rhythm.
Right.
And
They weren't
they
accustomed
fuck
to
up.
what you do it. And then also at the same time, back in those days, the DJ, you had a particular moment of the spotlight being able to be on you. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, you know, just that fact of it, you know, yeah, there were rappers, but DJs was doing something that seemed like it was defying gravity with what we were doing.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? That was the other part. So if you could do something that, you know, some of the other guys that you would hear in New York, okay, yeah, you respect what they're doing, but it became more amplified, just like I say, by the tempo being up, being danceable. And
Right, and people don't understand that. Like, you know, I remember I'm coming from memory. It's like muscle memory right now because I remember growing up during that time, and there really wasn't a catchphrase. There really wasn't a way to explain it. But looking back at it, I know now, like I always felt comfortable in in the shade of Florida because yeah, you don't get it, but we scratch different. There was always like I grew up in a world like it seemed like Florida was the concentration of every DJ on the fucking planet. And like we had the concentration of all DJs. And you're one of those reasons why there's all of these kind of different style DJs everywhere.
Right.
Shout out to Uncle Al. Shout out to you. Shout out, you know, to the Magic Mike and all the people that contributed because y'all were on a different wavelength, a frequency level. Like you didn't, if you didn't live here, you didn't get it.
Right.
And we would cut up on house. Like you give me a house record, I'm cutting on it.
Right. Exactly.
And that was a no-no back in the days.
Yeah, but it was still, like I say, it was still a party element, and I just think that, you know,
Right.
hip hop, you know, out of New York is born. In my opinion, it's kind of born out of jazz, and it's born out of the party stuff that was actually going on up there. Because most of the stuff that you would play at a party is going to be up tempo, and a lot of the records back in those days was up tempo. They just didn't have DJ elements to them. It was the slower stuff that had the strong DJ accents to them. You know,
Right.
Planet Rockets from New York, that's party, that's dance, this, that, other, but it didn't have no scratch element to it.
Hell no. Wasn't nobody scratching on Planet Rock. Wasn't nobody scratching on Play at Your Own Risk.
Right.
You know, like it was a tempo like you know, like you had to be like a master of scratching to get to that tempo. Like and for most of the guys say that?
Yeah, for it to sound like something, you had to be something.
Right. Like that was master level. Like that was like upper echelon. Like if you scratched on that, not only were you confident that you could do it, but everyone's going to be listening to see if you could keep up with that tempo and like create the rhythms you would on a 90 beat per minute. Because anyone sounds nice on 90 beats per minute. Like you can do whatever you want in that 90 beat per minute range. But start heading into that 120, 130, which Miami was like known for, like going in that 120, 130 range, like, and you scratching on that, yeah, that was anti-gravity. Shout out to all my space people out there that know about that cut. That cut was everything for DJs, man. And yo, man, I'm so on. Dude, I could talk to you for hours, man, because we get it, man. This hip hop thing, this thing of ours has been amazing to our lives. It's kept us in the place of being able to relate at all times, young, old, wherever we at in our lives, we can still communicate. And know and who knew, right? Like who
Right.
knew some experiment started out in the street in a park led to this.
Right.
We can still talk about some of the great moments in our lives and inspire others to actually, look at it from our POV, our point of view.
Well, I wish it would get back to the fact of people that know how to do this stuff is allowed to be able to do it versus people with. There's always been eras of people that felt like, whatever kind of fashion, whatever kind of street stuff they doing, that they're the in crowd. There's always been an in crowd in every era, but the in crowd always let the people that know music do music. Right now, I can't say that. The in crowd wants to do every goddamn thing.
Right. Right.
So, I can rap too. I can DJ too. I can do this too. Well, what about the people that do this for their craft? Ah, man, screw them. They're not nobody. I'm supposed to be able to, I got 8 rings. I want 10 more. I don't want nobody to be able to do anything else. So that's kind of where it is right now. And that's why hip hop is kind of taking somewhat of a black eye. I think that there's some innovative young dudes out here. They just ain't got innovative producers to push them. You know what I'm saying?
And I'm glad you brought that up because, like I said at the beginning of the show, and my man Rick just reminded me we're going on 2.5 hours. Because I already know this. I'm literally this show has been dedicated to my entire childhood. Okay. The producer aspect, we've been divided in a lot of ways, unlike other genres of music.
Right.
Hip hop has been allowed to feel like it's feast or famine. So someone that's a great lyricist may get credit on production in which he had nothing to deal with.
Right.
Case in point, like a Lauryn Hill, she made an amazing album, probably one of the greatest albums of all time in some arguments, but she didn't do it alone.
Right.
And that was the biggest thing against what she did. That for some reason, whatever she did, it wasn't given enough credit to everyone that was involved. And we're living in that time. We're living in that fruit that at the end of the day, it isn't okay to be one thing, right? Like, it's not okay to be a DJ anymore.
Right.
It's not okay to just be the producer. And I think music suffers behind that because Quincy Jones, he didn't make Thriller until he was 50. But he didn't sing on the record.
Right.
In fact, he didn't even play an instrument on the record. He orchestrated one of the greatest records ever made because he was willing to just be the producer of the record.
Right, exactly. Right.
And, that is a mindset. And that is a place where I think really we all aspire to be. Because you said it throughout the story tonight, which I think is important. And I think a lot of people will feel at the end of the day. You spoke on you just wanting to do what you thought was good. You wanted to make some music. So no, you don't want to fucking focus on all the business. Because that's what a lot of people, and I hate saying this, but it's true. Other cultures benefit from that because other cultures are fine with playing with playing other roles. They don't need to be the starting 5.
Right.
They can be the ball boy and get that ring.
Right.
They can be, the head coach. And if you know anything about what a head coach doesn't mean you make more decisions. It means you make less decisions. You bring
Right.
in other people to make all those multiple decisions for you. So whatever comes to you is the reduction of everything.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Right? So, okay, what we got? This and this. All right, let's roll with that. And you can roll with that, knowing that, I mean, and even 2, 3, 4, 5 decisions is still win or lose at the end of the day.
Right, exactly.
Like your whole legacy could be defined on one decision you made or two.
Yeah.
So I'm saying all of that to say, bro, I know it hasn't been it wasn't all stars and glamour, you know, doing what you guys did. I'm just telling you, and I'm saying, and I can speak for the city, that you guys made us proud here. We felt like that 2 Live crew was here too, you know, and that was everything for us, you know, mistakes and all.
Right.
You deserve your flowers. You deserve, and like I said, one of the underrated producers in hip hop, because you made so many gems and you made it okay for other producers to experiment, other DJs to scratch something different, and not that, you know, they scratched something different when they heard you.
Right.
So I'm giving you your flowers now, my brother. My man Rick said, hey, we're going to do something I like to do around this time, brother, and that is top 5 dead or alive. You're a DJ, so talk to me, my man. Top 5 DJs, dead or alive. And that doesn't mean somebody else's list. It means, what are the top 5 DJs that made you either feel like I got to put this record down for a minute so I can hear them, or inspired you, or just push the culture enough for you to feel like we're okay?
Right. Okay.
Top 5 DJs, dead or alive.
Okay. Well, I could say that it's really funny. My mentor, Tretch DJ CB, is definitely one of those guys because he opened my thought process of what I could do just by basically showing me that, you know, dealing with a crossfader is going to be better than doing what it is that you learned. And and then you got, I didn't know who Jazzy Jeff was until we went to, me and Luke went to New Music Seminar in 1986. You know, we just up there on business. And we
Shout out to the New Music Seminar.
We
from Florida. That was everything, man. That was our way in. New Music Seminar. Let's go.
So in '86, Jazzy Jeff was in the contest, and that was the first time that I seen the Transformer scratch. It actually wasn't on anybody's record at that time, but you know, he became popular for it. And the other guy, Cash Money, you know, they're both from the same city. So, you know, they made that scratch become something where it made everybody want to learn how to do it. So Jazzy Jeff was definitely one of those guys. And, you know, I would put him and Cash Money in the same boat because they're both from Philly. And
shout out to Philly. Let's go.
And so I would say those guys. And then I can't really say that. I mean, Grandmaster Flash, I never got a chance to really see him, you know, do a set until, you know, way down the road. But just the fact of him having the thought process of knowing how to put stuff together, like when he did Grandmaster Flash on the Wheels of Steel, I didn't know what the hell he was doing. I heard it, but I didn't know what the hell was going on. So just the fact of him being so far ahead of being able to shout out to Sylvia Robinson for, Sugar Hill Records. She definitely is the one who put really rap music in the thought process for the world to be able to see it. So I would say Grandmaster Flash is part of my top 5. And then I would say uh, it's just, it's more to just, I can't really see the guys that are after those guys because those guys was able to get a blueprint to do what they did. They didn't really come from an innovative source. They came from seeing what I did and Jazzy Jeff and Cash Money and, Joe Cooley from California, from Compton. These guys were light years ahead in a lot of different ways. And I'm trying to think of, Mixmaster Ice was good with what he was doing with Full Force and UTFO. That was innovative. I had never really seen Jam Master Jay do no DJ set. You would hear the little stuff, the rub scratches that he would do on Run DMC. So it was good flavor for the records that they were making. I can really say that, that those main guys, and then I don't, all of those guys, I don't put one in front of the other one because each one of them brought a different thing to the game, and I put myself in the mix of that. It's like, it's really funny. I was on my own dick when I was doing a lot of the stuff because I didn't think that, some of the scratch patterns that I was coming up with, I had never heard any other DJ do.
Nah, man, and you're absolutely motherfucking right. And it can't be said enough. A lot of DJs owe their style of patterns and cuts. That's what frustrates me a lot because Magic Mike is one of them, and you're one of them, and there's a couple more. The dude, I don't know him offhand. He's from Tough Crew.
Oh yeah. DJ Too Tough. Yeah.
Too Tough. Yeah.
He's part of that Philly shit.
And the way he cut up so damn tough, to this day,
right?
That could probably be emulated on a computer because that's about as close as you're gonna get to clean cutting that cut.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's like DJs are like guitar players. There's only but so many people that can be on Hendrix and Van Halen level. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And there's going to be certain nuances that these cats do that another guy can't really do. I remember one time I was at Hubert's house just doing some little stuff, and he seen me do.
Whose house? Whose house?
Yeah, Hubert, DJ Hubert.
Yes, my brother. Continue.
Yeah, I did a pattern that he had never seen done. And he just called out what it was that I was doing because he was able to see it. And it was the same thing with me with Jazzy Jeff. When I seen him doing the Transformer stuff, I seen how he was making it be done. I didn't know how to do it, but I could see what he did for me to be able to practice it and learn it. And I did a scratch pattern that Hubert wasn't up on or didn't think in that way because, like I say, all of us think like musicians, but all musicians have different little nuances of what it is that they do, and they all,
we're working off a minor and a major scale too. Now, mind you,
right. So
we're all as a DJ. We're all working off a minor and major scale, and sometimes it's augmented. And that has its place, but most of the music that is popular and that people gravitate to is what? Major and minor. And really, if we're going to really argue about music, most of it is minor that people feel. Major's happy, it's party, but the stuff that people remember are the most like you heard it like first. Jazzy Jeff, to your point, I first heard Transforming with Jazzy Jeff.
Mhm.
And he mastered that. Like it was a Philly thing. And you're one of the first people that I heard scratch at that fucking tempo. I don't give a fuck what anybody says they did first. For me, you're the first person I heard scratch at that tempo and make it sound like it was almost like anti-gravity. Like
I get that, and I respect that. And the thing, the crazy thing about it is that being a musician will bring that out in you. Now there is one dude that I did leave out, but and I think he's extremely phenomenal, and that's DJ Scratch from EPMD.
Oh yes, man! Shout out to DJ Scratch.
I didn't know about him like I know everybody else. I knew about him later, but but he definitely, if it was a table of 5, he made the table 6.
Right, no, and you're right, because he was the generation coming after you guys. He was part of the generation that,
He just wasn't on record yet. He was around. He just wasn't on record yet.
Right, and he was busy. And EPMD were known for were caring about the DJ culture.
Right.
Because even the DJ that they had prior to Scratch was dope.
Right.
And then Scratch came in and he set the whole bar for how DJs scratch from that point. So what you're saying, we're still hearing people scratch that way. Like that's their only scratch now.
Right.
They're not even scratch. They're not even transforming.
Right.
If they can do that scratch, then they're good. Like that's the whole mixtape. But shout out to DJ Scratch, man, because to your point, that's what's dope about DJing. He couldn't have got to that point without hearing guys like yourself and having that anti-gravity hand work on that turntable. Because part of the negative of the controller is that it's not anti-gravity.
Right.
There is a gravity to that. And you learn, like, especially for all my DJs that learn from the beginning when turntables weren't the turntables that they are now, where they give you all the kind of cheat sheets and cheat codes,
right,
where you had to learn the turntable because that turntable was different than the second turntable you bought. Like, both turntables had two attitudes. They were like children. And one turntable acted one way and was solid. It was like the shit. And then the other turntable was like a maniac. And you had to be able to kind of deal with that while you were dealing with the solid one.
Yeah, and that's the same thing about the mixers too. You know, these young guys, they're able to do the curve adjust, how the fader works. You had
crap.
Well, I mean, the crab stuff is one thing, but I'm saying that what helps them do it is that they're able to do
the the fader.
Yeah, the fader, the curve of the fader.
Right.
We weren't able, there was no way that something like that could be done because the way that the faders were back in the days, that scratch couldn't even be attempted. It just couldn't.
Right. It was a contour. The new ones now come with the contour.
Right.
And back then, you had to know exactly how long to let your finger go. And yeah, I mean, like I was telling a young buck the other day, I was saying, Yeah, you could buy that controller, man. But if you learn off turntables, you'll be able to learn everything. And
Right.
I hear a lot of OGs talking about, yeah, I don't get this new technology and all that, but it's actually easier to learn the technology than to go back and learn analog.
Right, exactly.
It's
That
easier to go from analog to digital than it is to go to digital to analog because the digital
have to
aspect,
learn,
you feel like you're losing something.
if they have
Analog,
to
you're
learn,
gaining the world.
if they have to learn these now, they wouldn't be able to do it
No, man, no,
because they
no.
don't. Number one, they don't have an understanding of a record player being raised with a record player in the house.
Right. And the record player in which you buy every record player, at least the real ones, the techniques that we grew up on,
Well,
they're
I'm not
all
even talking about,
handmade.
I'm
They're
not
all
even talking about the
handmade.
techniques. I'm just saying, like, when we grew up in the late 60s, early 70s, having a
No,
turn.
no, no. And I'm speaking to that too.
Yeah,
All those turntables are handmade, meaning they have their own character to them. The
right,
turntable you buy for 500 may last you a year without you having to do anything weird to it. And the turntable I buy may last me 6 months,
right,
but I know how to make it work. It's like an engine, it's like a car.
right.
You know, like the car you buy. One of the famous quotes I know from Sin City. It's like I'm the only one that could get this piece of junk to work. Like that's awesome because that's how machines were built when we were kids or before we were born. It was kind of like whatever machine you got was actually all the money you paid to buy that was actually it was built for you. Like the
Right.
experience you got with that machine is exclusively for you. Like we're not all gonna have the same experience on that machine because
Right.
that machine was built for you. So you buy two turntables, each of them got their own personality.
Right, exactly.
They just do.
It's very hard to get turntable rentals because the balances are going to be different, and
Right.
you do all kind of weird tweaking to them and this and that, whatever.
Right.
They do have, characteristics. If this one's been
One pitch may go out before the other one.
right,
One may be kind of like floating on the pitch versus the other one. You know what I mean? Like
right,
one needle fucking lasts forever versus the brand new one. Like all of these variables are like part of like what makes you you. Like and that's why it's hard to come from a digital aspect and jump into an analog aspect. That's why I'm thankful that I grew up in an analog
yeah,
world
for sure. For sure.
because analog is about imperfections.
Right,
The
exactly.
digital world is about perfections. And depending on who you are is depending on what's most important most important to you.
Right, for sure.
What I loved about analog is that it was warm, but warm is not always perfect. There's a lot of dirt in warm,
Right.
right? Like there's a lot of noise in warm, but that's what makes it warm.
Yeah, the coolest thing about it is that, I don't think you really notice it until you listen back now. You didn't notice it then when it was going on.
Nah, hell no, man. We grew up on tapes, right?
Right.
8 tracks, tapes, vinyl. CDs came later, and to be real 100, most of the people that grew up on tapes, vinyls, and 8 tracks, we hated them CDs.
Yeah.
It ruined music. The only thing we liked about it is like we felt like we were the distributor because we can like burn a bunch of CDs. Outside of that, the sound, the quality,
Skip to a song. That was the other thing. Skipping to a song.
right, and skipping through a song. Other than that, it sucked. because we heard things we didn't want to hear in that song. But that's what that elevating up to that bit rate would, going from 12, sometimes 8-bit, to 16. It revealed shit we didn't want to look at. Like, oh shit, my uncle's a fucking pervert. Oh, fuck you. I'm not trying to listen to that. Like the frequency, man, it wasn't like completely inviting, is all I'm saying. Shout out to my man Rick. What are you doing now and where can we get it?
Anybody that's trying to holler, they can, catch me on IG, Instagram, at 2LiveMix. I don't know if I put that up on the screen or not. It's at the number 2LiveMix. You can reach me.
Hold on. Let me throw it up here real quick, man, because that shit is important, and let's do that. So is 2Live
Mix? Am I like instead of 2Live Crew, it's 2LiveMix?
Two X's, right? 2 X's, right?
Yes.
.com?
No. Just on the IG. You can just reach me there. You can message me there.
So at IG.
Yeah. Instagram, right.
So if you can see this, please reach out to my man, Mr. Mixx. One of the creators, if not the creator of bass music in the 305, the 407, you name it, man. Duval County. He did some shit that it's never going to be enough credit for, man, because you brought it from England to California to Miami, man. And that sound is everything, man, because it took your ears to figure it out, and you did it, man. You solved the Rubik's Cube when it came to the bass music, man. You did.
I appreciate the compliments and all of that. And, just like I say, I wish I would have known about having your own personal publicist. So
I heard that, brother. I heard that. Right? You want to think about that shit? You just want to make the beat. You just want to create. You just want to cut.
Yeah, but it all goes hand in hand. And, who's to say if I understood that, the skill set would have slacked off, or I felt I could have got it off of a different type of muscle, and it wouldn't even work the way it ended up working out.
Right.
That's where play your position comes in. We just live in a day now where, there's not enough good workers for the positions to be played. So you got to try to play all of them.
Right. Well, let me tell you something, my man. If nobody tells you today or yesterday, man, I'm telling you, thank you, bro. Thank you for what you did, bro. You inspired a lot of DJs out in this city, bro. You gave a lot of motherfuckers courage, probably that didn't have any from the beginning, to try out something different. You did that. I know that. I seen it. And without your contribution to what we know, or what this thing of ours called hip hop, we don't have what we have right now, man. You did a lot for Miami, for California, but most importantly, you did a lot for the world, man. And I just want to tell you, thank you, bro. And we appreciate you, bro.
I appreciate y'all. I appreciate the opportunities. Anytime I can tell my story, tell what it is that people need to understand. You know what I mean? I love the opportunities of being able to speak on it, for sure.
Yeah, man. You're part of my childhood. Shout out to Jeremiah. Yep. You already know, man. We let him talk, man. He been telling the story all night. Shout out to Rick, man. You already know, man. He been telling the story all night, man. It's a good thing, man, because we need that. We need that. 2020, 21 is all about telling your story, man. Telling your fucking story as raw as it can possibly be. Just tell your story, man, because we need that. We need that reality. Everything else has been fabricated up to this point. We need our people. We need our brothers and sisters to tell our story, to tell your story, tell my story. You can't tell your story without telling mine, and that's what's dope.
You're right.
And I appreciate that, man. Yo, bro, we gonna keep in touch, man. I hope this is not the last time we speak, man. Because
no, for sure. We're linked in now. You know, there's things that I got. You know, some irons in the fire. You know, but COVID slowing up the process at the moment. But there's some things that you're gonna be hearing about, and we're gonna definitely link up because I definitely gotta market it and promote it. So you'll get first dibs on some things and this and that. So that's that.
Yeah, and like I said, bro, I know I can speak for Orlando when I say, bro, you've been a part of us from day one, bro, and we appreciate everything you did, man. Much kudos to you, man. Peace and blessings, man, and continue to do the greatness that you've already done, brother. And we respect y'all from here, bro. So love y'all, man.
Thank you very much. And I'm
Hey,
out.
give it up for my man, the legend, the myth, Mr. Mixx from Two Live Crew is what we are. Let's go. Yes, my brother, man. Thank you, man. Thank you. Thank you. Hey, man, you know what time it is, man? It is time for us to say goodnight, man. We went long tonight, but when we're talking about my childhood, man, I've got to ask every question, man, as if it was my last moment on earth. I got to ask every question as if it was my last moment on earth. You feel me, man? Shout out to Rick. Where we at, man? Shout out to my man Jeremiah. Where we at? Love you, man. Hey, man, this was us tonight. Us. This was our childhood, man. One of the legends that we always admired from the beginning, from day one, man. This man did so much to give us the frequencies that we heard, to mold us into what we already doing. Shout out to Chucky Trees. What's good, homie? Shout out to my man JJ, Jeremiah, my man Ricky, my man Sandman. What's good? Illsboro on the check-in. We love you, man. Thank you for tuning into the show. We went long tonight, but for the culture, that's what we do. Continue to tune in to the Sound of Orlando show. We love you. Holla.